We are back again. Couple updates before I get into the video. I'm going to be aiming for about upload once a week, and then I ordered a bunch of parts, so new levers, clutch and brake, and then I also got some new blinkers, indicators coming just for the fronts. I actually really like these back little bullet style blinkers, so I think I'm going to leave those for now until I decide to throw a fatter tire on the back, but the front end's going to get some remodeling here for sure. But other than that, let's get right into it. This is going to be everything that I love about my 2021 Indian Scout bobber. Let's start off with the looks. Obviously it looks great, it looks stocky and thick, it looks meaty, looks like a bullet really. A little narrow in the back, but really fat, especially from the backside. If you look at that tank, it just looks wide. And in comparison to the handlebars, it looks great. You can't really beat anything, in my opinion, stock than this bike for the looks of it. That being said, the compliments you're going to get from people, I mean, daily I get drivers, non-motorcycle riders, giving me thumbs up outside their window. And then motorcycles, everyone rides up to me. Oh, hey, I love your bike, and let's pull over. I want to take a look at it. I usually let them sit on it and go for a ride if they got their motorcycle license. At least my insurance covers anyone riding with a license at least. But compliments everywhere, definitely. It's great for around town. This bike is awesome for any short distance. I have taken it long distance, and your lower back can hurt a little bit, especially since this is the bobber, it's a little bit lower, as well as you're almost in a V position when you're riding with your feet so far forward with the front controls, and then the handlebars pretty short to begin with. A lot of people put the mini apes on it pretty much right after buying, but I refuse to do that just because I don't want to sacrifice the looks of this thing. I'm 5'9", and it's got a low seat height. I've never once had a problem with reaching for the front controls or the bars. Maybe if you were a little shorter, you might. So if you're 5'8", 5'7", or anything under that, maybe consider, either going with the Scout 60, or I know they make mid controls, so you can switch the controls in the front right down there. You can move them back a couple inches, and that might make it a little bit easier. I think it sits right in front of that logo there on the crankcase. So that is an option for anyone who's shorter. This thing is a torque monster. So I often compare it to the next bike I want, which is an MT-09. Unlimited amounts of torque. It slows down a little bit once you get up past 80, 90, 100 miles an hour. I've had this thing up to about 120 according to the speedo, but I think it's a little slow. The speedometer, I think it was probably closer to 115 at the time. But absolute torque monster. Begs you to open up on any straightaway and on corners if you're leaning down a little bit, which the lean angle is not great on this, 29 degrees. But if you are leaning down in a corner and you give it the beans, it feels great to power through that corner. Absolutely. This thing is amazing fun to drive. As I said, anything in the town, so short distance is perfect, just because you can rip around, get tons of stairs, thumbs up, everything like that. But no matter where you're driving it, it's going to bring a smile to your face. Absolutely, no question there. There's an increasing number of aftermarket parts. When I first looked at these in 2015, and then I looked again in 2017 myself, there wasn't all that much for aftermarket parts, but now there's even more. And I'm sure it's only going to get better with time as these bikes stick around, just because they are so great, and they're so fun to customize and make a little bit your own. So myself, I want to get new exhaust pipes at some point. I think those Vance & Hines slash cuts are what I'm looking at as of right now, but I know there's a 2-to-1 combat exhaust, which a lot of people like as well, and that one really catches my eye as well. So it's all up in the air still. But definitely the front end will be changing. What else do we want to say? It feels well made. It feels well made, so and it's sturdy. So when I bought it brand new, everything felt really good. It still does to this day. Not that it doesn't. Knock on wood. Hopefully none of that changes. But it feels well made for the money I paid for it. Nothing feels flimsy or like it's going to break off. Maintenance is pretty easy. About the only maintenance I've had to do on this thing is, just basic things, checking the tire pressure before you get on it, that type of thing. And then the most maintenance effort that I've had to put in was like taking the seat off just so I could charge it with a trickle charger over the course of the winter. But that was very easy. If you've ever worked on anything in your life, that will be very easy for you as well. At least where I got my bike, they had a 2-year warranty at the Indian dealership on like the drivetrain, and it was either 2-year or 10,000 miles, whichever one comes first. And then it had like a lifetime warranty and a couple other things. So they're reliable, and everyone I've talked to, I've never heard of anyone having any troubles with this bike, any reliability issues at least. So it's been great for me. Never once, struggled to start up or anything like that, apart from when it was cold, and that's expected when you leave it in a garage at like 20 degrees sometimes. This is a great second bike. So as I mentioned before, I practiced on a Suzuki 250 for 3 to 5 years. It was my dad's bike, so it wasn't mine, so I couldn't have it all the time. So whenever he wasn't using it, I'd borrow it. And before I got this bike, I practiced for probably a couple months every day on the little 250. So this is a great second bike. I would not recommend this being your first and only ever bike. So if you just went out and got the MSF course passed, or you just finished that, or you just go to the dealer and, or not the dealer, the DMV, and pass your permit, I still would not recommend going out and buying this brand new. Especially if you're going to go brand new versus used. Maybe if you find a 2015 used or anything, older than the brand new year used, then maybe it's a good deal. Because if you drop this thing brand new, you will cry yourself to sleep. And I've thought about that before. I've yet to drop this or scratch it in any way. It's just really dirty is about the only problem I have with it at the moment, which I'm going to wash it this weekend, so that's not really a big deal. There's definitely a lot of room to grow with this bike. So as I said, perfect second bike. So it's got a lot of power, and it's great to grow in because it's not that first bike, which maybe you'll crash, maybe you'll drop at some point, and I shouldn't even say maybe. More than likely, it's bound to happen to you at some point. Riding is dangerous. Inherently, it's dangerous. It's a lot more to do than just driving. So, accidents are bound to happen, especially when you can't control everyone else on the road. But this is a perfect second bike, or even a third bike for some people, depending what you're looking for. It feels good to command this bike, so when you turn it, it's begging you to turn it. It feels good. It feels like it should. It feels, I don't want to say manly. That's not the right word. When you turn it, it doesn't just turn by itself. You have to force it, and it feels good when you force it, if that makes sense at all. It feels rugged and big, but doesn't feel, I'm not a super big guy or anything, but doesn't feel like hard to move. It just feels how it should. It feels like you should be having to make it work a little bit. You should be having to force the turn a little bit, and it rewards you for it. It shifts really well. I feel like you can't hurt this engine. And everyone I've talked to, from the mechanics who work on these at the dealership to people online, they've said, the break-in period, so many of them have just said, don't even worry about it. This engine is rugged. It's built to last. And I truly do feel like that. Having, misshifted a time or two since the, almost a year since I've had this thing, even then, the engine never, backfired or felt like it was going to break or anything like that. Then again, mine's brand new, so maybe if you've had it for a couple years and you shifted down one too many times or something like that, then maybe it would have even more adverse effects on your bike. But to me, it feels like you can't hurt the engine. This thing is rock solid. Another benefit of this bike is that it's cheaper than the Sportster S, which is a Harley, their new bike. However, it's not necessarily fair to compare them. So my out-the-door price on this bike right here, fees and everything, was about $14,000 last year. It's probably gone up a little bit. But the Sportster S, I believe right now, is starting MSRP at like $15,500 or $499 maybe. And then, shipping, or not even shipping, but like the undocking fees and stuff like that, at least at Harley, it's probably going to carry you up to the $17,000 mark. Then again, like I said, I'm not sure if it's fair to compare them because that Harley Sportster S, I think, has 24 more horsepower and I can't remember, a little bit more torque as well, I believe. It's got a better lean angle, so it's probably a better bike overall, but definitely not going to beat the looks on this thing. And like I said before, the quality of this bike is excellent. I've had hit or miss with some Harleys. Not that I've owned any myself. My grandpa's got one, and his old bike, which again, maybe it's just because it was made in the late 80s, but his bike quality was just very low. It just didn't feel good. Everything felt cheap and plasticky and not too good. Another thing I love about this bike, which doesn't come stock on very many, is that it comes with the bar end mirrors. Typically they have them down, but I requested mine up just because I think it looks better and you can see a little bit more when you're riding. That being said, I'm going to switch out bar end mirrors. That's part of what I want to do to the front, just waiting on the parts to come in. But I want to do bar end mirrors that are a little bit smaller and a little bit closer to the handlebar. So instead of the mirror being all the way up here, it'd be a little bit lower, closer to like right there, and a little bit smaller of a circle mirror as well. Plus I'm going to put some bar end indicators on there so I can eliminate these ugly front stock indicators. Also on that list, which again I'm just waiting on parts, is going to be the front headlight. I want to replace the headlight in there with I believe it's an Eagle light that I got ordered, and it's got a little halo LED in there, which I think is going to make it look a little bit better. The stock exhaust is not totally sounding weak, which is nice. It definitely is not as pretty as what they offer aftermarket, because my biggest complaint probably is just that these exhaust pipes are longer than the tire, and it just sticks out. It looks ugly to me. That being said, they are excellent for beginner pipes. I've heard most bikes, especially on that 250 my dad had, the little Suzuki, that thing sounds like a moped. This bike sounds like a motorcycle when you start it up, which, hey, why don't we do a start up real quick? Oh, probably gotta turn the key on. One sec. Also, don't judge me. I've got little skeleton fake gloves here. When it's cold out, sometimes you gotta layer up. There's the stock pipes, just starting it up for you. Oop. So there you go, that's that. What else do I want to mention? Another thing I've been told, at least at my job and then a couple of my buddies' house or my parents' house when I go to visit them on this bike sometimes, is people can hear me blocks out before I get there. They say, oh yeah, I could hear you coming. And I'm like, what, the exhaust? You hear the exhaust? You hear me coming that way? And they say, no, I can hear the camshafts. So this engine does sound very pretty when it's running. If not just the exhaust pipes, the engine sounds amazing. It sounds powerful. It sounds like a nuclear power plant, if you will. And that nuclear power plant, as I mentioned before, it wants to be abused. It wants to be pushed to the limit. It wants you to go over 100 miles an hour. And every time I get on this thing, I'm so happy I bought it. I've never once regretted it so far. It's only been a year, or under a year, I guess, but yeah. That's everything that I love about this Indian Scout Bobber. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to get rid of it or trade it. Even if I want another bike, I'd probably just have to keep this one anyways. It's truly best purchase I've ever made in my life so far. That being said, I'm pretty young, so I'm sure, a house or something like that may outdo it one day, but as a young kid, this is the best purchase I've ever made. As long as you're going to treat it with respect and, take the MSF course, practice on a littler bike or something like that, this is the bike for you. Well, that's going to wrap up the video, guys. As I said before, I'm waiting on parts to come in the mail before I redo the front end a little bit. The bar end mirrors, indicators, and then that headlight, possibly the cowl as well. I haven't decided yet. I bought the part for it, but I don't know if I'm going to redo the cowl or, put the classic basket style on there. It's not basket, that's not the right word, but it's a classic look to it as opposed to this, I don't know, more modern look in my opinion. But yeah, just waiting on those parts. So leave the comments on anything else you'd like to see. Again, it's going to be a couple weeks probably until I do the modification, just because I'm waiting on the parts to come in. So maybe next week I'll do everything I dislike about the bike, which there's not that much, so it'll be a shorter video. And then the following week I'll do another long one, and that'll maybe be the modifications of the front end. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time. Remember to always wear protective gear, ATGATT if you will, and have a good rest of your day.